Good evening. We're going to call tonight's meeting of the City Commission to order. Will you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Do we have anybody this evening that's joining us for public input on any matter? All right. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item, the consent agenda. Any items to be removed?
Motion to approve. Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roll call vote.
Gray.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Ketterman.
Aye.
Munsell.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries. Next item, special presentations, 2016 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Audrey Oderman of Meishauser and Company, PA, the city's auditing firm, will be present to review the city's 2016 audit and comprehensive annual financial report.
Good evening, Mayor,
Okay.
Commissioners. Audrey is right here. Come on up. She'll give you a brief presentation of the audit for 2016, and I'll just turn it over to her.
All right.
All right, good evening. My name is Audrey Oderman, and I'm with Meishauser. I'm going to go through and just briefly discuss some letters of communication that we have within the financial statement, and then answer any questions that you may have over the entire financial statement. As you know, the financial statements are the city's financial statements. There are 3 letters within this financial statement that are our letters, and so those are the ones I like to come out and talk about. The very first one is on page 1 and 2, and that's the auditor's report. That report goes through and it talks about the auditor's responsibility and management's responsibility, but most importantly, it gives the opinion on the financial statements, and that's really what everybody probably wants to hear anyway. So if you read the very last paragraph of page 1, that's our opinion of the financial statements. It gives an opinion on all the various components within the financial statements, and each of those opinions is unmodified. So that's the highest opinion that the city financial statements can receive. It speaks to the work that you do and the directive that you give your staff. Jamie does an excellent job. I have other clients that know Jamie and say, man, that audit must be a piece of cake because Jamie's running it. So he does a very good job. He's very professional when we're here, and the opinion speaks to that. We talk throughout the year on different things that are coming up, and always ask for advice and our opinion on how to handle matters, and we appreciate that very much. So a component of the financial statements is on page 3 through 14, and that's management's discussion and analysis. So if you want to read something really in depth in these financial statements, I encourage you to read that, because that's management's opportunity to analyze the year. What happened, conditions that occurred, assets that were put into place, and so that's their opportunity to compare the years. Really the only place that happens in the financial statement. So I encourage you to read that part closely. Now we're going to bounce way ahead to page 93, and that's the beginning of what we call the governmental audit section. So every entity that spends more than $750,000 in federal aid has to have a special audit. We call it a single audit, where we go through and we audit the federal expenditures. The programs that we picked this year were Section 8 and the Airport Improvement Grant, which was probably much larger this year than it has been in several years. And so we picked those 2 grants and audited them for compliance with the federal government, as well as some state regulations that there may be over those grants as well. And we look at all sorts of things. We look at invoices, we look at eligibility requirements for people participating in those programs, and then we give an opinion over those programs. So over those 2 programs and that schedule of expenditures of federal awards, we gave an opinion of unmodified, which again is the highest opinion that can receive. The individuals within the city that work in those areas deal with a lot of compliance and a lot of very detailed compliance. They do a very good job of retaining records and making sure that everything is in line, not only for us, but if they would get audited by one of the federal agencies as well. We feel like they're very aware of the compliance issues and very aware of changes in those compliance issues as they occur. So that's really probably the most that you can ask for out of the employees that are working in those areas. Our last two letters in the financial statements start on page 97 and 98. And those letters go through and they talk about the city's internal controls. They talk about the work that we do over internal controls. Our professional standards don't allow us to give an opinion on internal controls, but we would need to notify you if we feel like there were material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and we did not note any of those. The control environment we feel here is very sound. Again, they ask for advice and always are very aware of how important controls are over the transactions of the city. And then on to the last letter in the financial statements, and that is on page 99 and 100. And this letter just goes through and it talks about that schedule of federal awards and the audit that we do over that. So a lot of very technical language within that letter, but it does have that opinion as well, which is, as I said, was unmodified, which is the highest opinion that it can receive. Okay. So again, I'd like to thank Jamie and his staff and all the work that they do when we're out here. We appreciate it very much. Do you have any questions?
Just want to thank you for your time. I read through it. I didn't have any questions. Does anybody have anything that needed to be brought up? Thank you very much. Thank you, Jamie, Stacy, Darren, all the staff for what you guys do and helping put this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Danny.
Next item on the agenda, Mid-City Renaissance Plan. Elan Consulting will present the area-wide plan prepared with a grant from the Environmental Protection Agency for the redevelopment of the area from 7th Street to Washington and Rouse to Joplin. Jay.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'm actually very pleased to present to you tonight I guess we would call it a final draft. We have a few tweaks yet to make to it, but essentially the completed plan for the reuse of the area around Mission Clay, which we've been referring to as the Mid-City Renaissance District. I think there's a number of very exciting things that are present in this plan, not the least of which is a detailed implementation with steps and dollars and things that we can really get a hold of and start acting on. I'd like, Alon is here tonight to make a presentation of that final plan to allow you to ask questions about it. As I know I gave it to you, it's a little lengthy, all right, and I hope you had time to at least take a look at it. So if you had some questions, they're here tonight to answer any of those. You guys ready? And you. Where are we? Right here.
Dark, is that okay?
They can see it on
Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name's Lisa Nagel, and I'm with Alon Planning, Design, and Landscape Architecture. And we're from Saratoga Springs, and we spoke to you probably about a year ago when we started this project to introduce you to the project. With me is Rob Holzman. We're both been the key staff members in preparing the plan, along with our committee members. We have quite a few committee members here this evening as well that we've been working with over the last about 16 months. So we wanted to take just a few minutes and kind of walk you through. As Jay said, he did send the plan, and we do try to keep our plans at a somewhat manageable read, so they're not too voluminous, but there still is a lot of information in here. So I'm going to go relatively quickly. If you have any questions, please just ask. Just want to remind project overview, what we did, how we got started, where the funding came from, and then we're just going to hit some of the highlights of some of the existing conditions that we've have in and around the study area. We're going to talk about the vision, and then we're going to talk really about the redevelopment concept, so the ideas that came up through this project. So very briefly, this is funded by the EPA, and it's what they call their area-wide planning program. And it focuses on, as you see the word brownfields, but it's really areas that are underutilized in our cities. So places that have been previously developed, that are no longer perhaps in active use, or maybe they're in active use but not to their fullest potential. The idea is to bring these areas back in on the tax rolls, generate jobs, and recreate part of the community. This area, which is about 348 acres, is critical because it's in the center of your city, which is thus the name, the Mid-City Renaissance Plan. We've done a lot of this work back in New York State, where we come from with Saratoga Springs, and it was a program in New York State, and the EPA actually adapted this program to a nationwide program, and that's sort of how we ended up here. People say, how did you get here? I won't go through the detailed timeline, but we started in really about winter of 2016. And if you look at the spring of 2016, that was a critical time in March and April. We did a lot of outreach to the community, and I see many familiar faces in here. People that came to the open house that we had in April. Was a 2-day event. We also interviewed property owners, landowners, business people. We interviewed, I think, almost every key staff person, head of the departments. And with all that information is what fed into the plan. So you're going to see that. It isn't Alon's plan, it's Pittsburgh's plan, and it came from the community that took the time to come to our public events and provide their input. When we took that information through the summer of last year, we started to develop the plan, and then worked with the committee over this last winter to get to where we are now. We're considering it really a final draft, as Jay said. We had a committee meeting over lunch today over at City Hall, and we have a few notes in the margins, a few tweaks that we want to make into the plan. But so it'll come back to you when we just make some minor edits into the plan. So the project area is bounded by 7th on the north, Washington on the south, Joplin on the west, and Rouse on the east. It's 386 acres, so it is very large. Most of it is manufacturing. It's about almost half the land within their study area is manufacturing land use, as the land is currently being used. A little bit of residential, mostly in the northeast corner and really in the southeast corner. We did an extensive inventory of existing conditions in and around the property, but we just wanted to highlight a couple of them with you. This is land use in the property, within the study area on the left and around the study area on the right. And the reason we wanted to show you this is that in the area on the left, if you look, this is the Mission Clay property, for example. Purple is an industrial color, indicates industrial use. Yellow indicates residential use. Green, open space, et cetera. But so you can see that, yes, that historically, Dickey Clay, Mission Clay, you have other industrial uses in here. That makes perfect sense. And then the areas that developed around the property, up north of 7th, down southwest by Washington and Joplin, a lot of residential areas. And the reason why we wanted to show you this is that as we consider the redevelopment of our study area, we really would like it to be in the context of the community, so that we're not, for example, bumping up hard, heavy industrial uses up against these neighborhoods. That wouldn't be very good for the neighborhoods. So we consider not only within our study area, but actually around it too. We're also looking at connections to downtown, connections to PSU. How does this site relate to the overall city of Pittsburgh? And those are some of the things that we looked at. When we look here, we also, just to let you know, we did, the area shaded in yellow is the property. This is an EPA-funded program, and part of the focus is to look at underutilized properties that have a real or perceived contamination. So we had other team members on our team. We had PEC here in Pittsburgh, looked at civil engineering matters for us, and we had Triad Environmental, who looked at the existing environmental conditions. So we went to KDHE, went to the property owners to try to understand through just public records. We aren't digging holes at this stage. Just public records, what type of contamination, because that influences the decisions that you make going forward, right? So if it's a highly contaminated area, it's a little bit harder to redevelop than an area that might be less contaminated. So we need to understand it's like a soup that we put all these things together in. The map on the right is also critical. We also teamed with Pittsburg State University. We teamed with the biology department, the Cal Business School, and the communications department. And the biology department studied actually the stream that kind of comes through there across 4th, underneath 4th, comes out on Rouse. And that blue area is the floodplain. So that's critical to understand as you consider redevelopment, because we don't really want to build new houses in a floodplain, for example. Just to give another shout out to Pittsburg State University, they also, on the communication side, they designed this template of what you're looking at, the colors, the logo, the cover on the plan. Did a great job for us. If you came to the open houses, they designed all those boards. biology department did this, and then the Kels Business School actually helped us understand some of the market opportunities that we're looking at. We have, oh, who's he gone? Michael, somewhere? Did he leave? Oh, he left. Oh. He did the housing study, which I believe he presented to you
Right.
all not too long ago. That was very informational for us. So all that information we were used to then look at the vision and the guiding principles in the plan going forward. At our first open house back in April, we asked people in 3 to 5 words, how would you describe the Mid-City area? What do you want to see? And people put their notes and up on Post-it boards on the boards, and we took all that information, we put it in the computer, and we can generate this graphic image that the larger the word is more people said it, okay? So the most people said connecting, right? Functional, history, fun, family, modern, sustainable. You can look at some of the smaller words: innovative, vibrant, native, cohesive. So these are all the words that the residents of Pittsburgh came and told us, what they wanted to see. So through this, we begin to develop a vision. And visions are key in planning because it sets the stage for how we move forward. If we're asking for grant money or what is it's a cohesive vision for the community, work together. I'm not going to read all of these, but we also took that and said, okay, so what are some guiding principles? So as this area is redeveloped, what are some of the things that we should be considering? And these, again, came from the residents of Pittsburgh. It's a sense of place and family. There's a strong, obviously very strong tie to the Dickey Clay area here. We stopped and looked at the Frisco Depot today with Jay, and he's telling us how he took the Dickey Clay tiles and put them on his roof. And, we talked about the railroad history. All that is so deeply rooted here. Recreation, connectivity, and access. We showed you the land around that, connecting to downtown, connecting to the PSU. History and heritage, I just spoke of that. Dickey Clay, Mission Clay, the railroads, et cetera. And then sustainable as we think about energy. We're going to talk a little bit about energy as we go forward, or the reuse. And just redeveloping the center of your city is the most sustainable thing you can do because you're redeveloping right in the core of your community. So with all of this background information, all of a vision, input from people, we also asked people, what do you want to see here in terms of literally physically located here? And part of what we had to do was come up with some alternative concept plans. And we came up with 2, and they're both very similar. I'll just orient you to each of them. So through the center is 4th Street. Here's the main railroad lines coming through, Watco and Kansas City Southern. We looked at Joplin here on the west, Rouse on the east. So we began to look at all kinds of different information. And again, this is we looked at mixed use here, north of 4th Street, looking at residential, commercial, housing, light industrial. You'll see that this is pretty consistent over here, where it is light industrial right now currently being used. The railroad tracks, and then as we look over towards the Mission Clay area, and then north of 4th Street, right here is Schlanger Park, and you have this residential neighborhood. South of 4th, we looked at economic development, recreational opportunities, largely around where that floodplain is, in Mission Clay, and then looking at residential. And when we talk about this residential, we're looking at what we're calling like a 55-plus active living, small homes built around a green where people can retire in Pittsburgh and stay here. Maybe they want to get out of their larger home and be in something smaller where they don't have to mow the yard every 2 weeks because it's been raining for 5 days straight, or what have you. We looked at a second concept, B, and really the only difference is that at the time we were doing this, there was discussion in the community about the school and the school vote, and there was some thought that, if there was an area for a centrally located new school, that this could be in the Mid-City area. So we took those 2 alternatives and we came up with what we call a preferred concept plan, and this is really where we are with a plan. Again, you'll see the railroad tracks through the center of 4th Street up here, and then our study area boundaries. Now, the railroad tracks, a lot of people talked about, can we do a siding and use the railroad tracks for economic development, or can we cross over the railroad tracks? Can we get rid of the railroad tracks? There was all kinds of questions from the public. We did talk with Watco, talking to the railroads. it's really a fixed element. You can't do any of that for a whole host of reasons, but we can't really do any of that. So you'll see that from the railroad tracks west, we have the power facility here, the substation. We have the what we're calling mixed-use commercial light manufacturing is really sort of that whole western edge. It comes down into this sort of pie-shaped piece and then actually wraps over down Washington. So you have your Masonite area just right here, and they're using some of the facilities here. That's consistent throughout. You'll see some recommendations. It's a good use. It's an appropriate use, but we'll have some recommendations. As we move east of the railroad tracks, north of 4th, I'll talk about these in detail. We still have the park, Schlanger Park, the residential area. 4th Street, let's continue on with some of the commercial development, the commercial strip development that you have going on there. And then as you move into where Mission Clay largely is, actually before I get there, this natural area here just south of 4th, the corner of 4th and Rouse, we're looking at trying to use that as a natural and recreational area because it does flood. It's in the floodplain. As we move into Mission Clay, we're looking at a variety of uses that range from art and cultural activities to power generation. So there's a whole sort of range of elements in there. So just to get into some details in those 3 primary areas, 3 more slides here. When we look at the area west of the railroad tracks, this light manufacturing, mixed commercial, there's a whole series of recommendations. This is sort of an abbreviated version of them. But we're talking about a vegetative buffer at the substation. So this is something we talked about today. They did plant some shrubs. They're not very big, but they planted some shrubs in front of the substation. But we also learned that they're thinking of maybe that they could have something more substantial to try to shield that substation because it's one of the gateways. You're driving through Pittsburg and it's all of a sudden this big giant thing that isn't very attractive in your face. So those are some of the tweaks that we're making to the plan. The second is redevelop a sub-district into a campus environment. So one thing that the thinking is if these businesses all can work together and come together and think about really like a campus, like a mixed-use light industrial campus, that they can help, perhaps help each other, share resources, share knowledge, grow together, and it's all about economic development, right? We want those businesses to stay, we want them to be strong, we want them to succeed, and this is one that we can do that. Talking about Joplin Street, enhancing what we call the streetscape, that's really just improving the street. There is sidewalk, and then no sidewalk, and then broken sidewalk, and so there's things of this nature, and I see it's on your agenda later to talk about sidewalks, but really making sure that the pedestrian can move safely on that street. It does carry a fair amount of traffic. And lighting is another key. And then one more here, considering closing, there's a sort of a turnoff up here onto North Smelter Street at 4th Street. It creates a little bit of a bottleneck and a dangerous situation, especially if KDOT is redoing that bridge. It might be worth checking and looking at that because we could create a safer situation and better traffic situation as you move through there. So now north of 4th Street, so this area north of 4th where Schlanger Park is and the residential areas, we did tour this neighborhood in quite a number of times. We want to look at home ownership. There are some homes that are really great in there, and then you could be next to a home that isn't, maybe could use some assistance. And you have housing programs that are very good in the city. So we want to make sure that people are in a safe home and can live there. Looking again here at sidewalks and improved sidewalks and improved lighting. Some of the streets are a little bit dark at night. Lighting can help with safety, the comfort of the pedestrian. 4th Street itself is a very important east-west route, obviously, and we want to look, and we're recommending doing a really kind of a detailed study of that corridor. You built the sidewalks up to the bridge coming east to west, where then the bridge will pick up. Really expanding just on what you were doing there and say, where else can sidewalks be? Can a bike lane be on that road? Can we put that road on a road diet and have a bike lane and parking, et cetera? Those are things that we just can't make that call. You need to study and make sure you're not impacting fire trucks because that's a major east-west for fire trucks, and we don't want to impact the safety of the pedestrians. One very popular element was a dog park, and that came up through the public input. So we're recommending putting a dog park and playground, so the dogs actually have this playground, in Schlanger Park. And along with that, relocating the skate park. The skate park's sort of tucked away. It's in a dark area. It is a little bit dated, built out of wood. So we're to make it safer, to keep that, to relocate that, and I'll show you where in just a moment. And then last but not least, the school. over on 6th in Rouse. Great facility, great building, a lot of land, sort of a big front yard and a big backyard behind it. Really thinking about studying that. Can we repurpose that school maybe into senior apartments or just a mixed-use building, using the land on either side as either areas to recreate, shaded areas to sit outside and be outside. In our experience, we've seen a lot of these older schools are not easy, but easier to repurpose because they're just built really well and they have good bones about them. So then we get to the core, the Mission Clay property. So just 4th is up here. Rouse is over on the east side here. And this is not all Mission Clay property, largely their property. So we took the time to do a more detailed design of this area so we could articulate it. We have been talking to Mission Clay through this whole process. And they're at the table, which is great because a lot of communities where we do this, the main property owner is absent. So they are not absent, and we're talking with them and thinking about how we can do this. And we've shared these ideas with them, and they're very excited about some of them. So that's really good news because, it's a big piece of property and it's a heavier lift to get that redeveloped. 4th Street we already talked about. When we talk about multi-sports field up here in the by Rouse, this is where those homes are in the floodplain. Those homes are repeatedly flooded, and you can use FEMA dollars to actually relocate them out of the floodplain. And if you use FEMA dollars to do that, you can only use that land as open space or recreation. You can't put houses back there, for example, or new retail. So we have measured it out, and we do have some room for some multi-sports fields, whether it's soccer, football, play fields for tots, any type of multi-purpose field. One of the big exciting things over here is the solar array, and we sized this up and worked with a colleague of ours who does a lot of solar redevelopment on brownfield sites, and he helped us size, and you can see that that a solar array of this size could power about 1,000 homes annually, so that's pretty significant. Your substation here, you're talking about power and energy in this community. It's very typical to see solar arrays on brownfield sites because sometimes you can't dig down or reuse that land for anything else. So this could be pretty exciting. This is something that Mission Clay can say, yeah, we're going to do that, right? We're going to carve that piece off, generate some income for that family so that we can do the rest of this project as it happens in stages. This phytoremediation test area, that's down here. This is something that's that we're seeing. There's actually a woman who owns a company, and they plant trees that take up the contaminants in the soil into the trees on different kinds of plants. And the recommendation in the plan is to team with Pittsburg State University and the biology department to kind of carry on this and do a testing area of how you can use plants and trees to clean the soil. So that's a very exciting thing. Baseball fields here, well, we actually made the change today to call them ball fields because we understand there's a growing softball community in Pittsburgh. So whether they're baseball fields or softball fields or fields that could be converted to either or, that was something we heard loud and clear when we were doing all of our public outreach as something desired in the community. This Arts and Cultural Center is something that's very interesting. We did share this with Mission Clay. So, as I said, many people have a strong attachment to Mission Clay. So people said, keep the kilns or keep the buildings. And we said, well, it's an interesting idea. Let's look into that. And we did tour the facility with the Mission Clay people. And we're recommending, maybe keep some of that, maybe keep some of the kilns. And you could fire large pieces of pottery in there that there's only one other place in the United States that has kilns this big. So there's no place else. But also think about art and cultural centers, whether it's music or just art or any type of venue like that, to consider that through there. This community fitness center, this is something that came up too, possibly building a new YMCA, relocating your Y. It's it's a fine facility. It's near the park, but it's a little bit older, a little bit dated. Thinking about a community campaign to build a new YMCA, which would be in the center of your community and accessed by a lot of people. And then finally, different housing choices. This is sort of that concept of the 55 plus housing, where small houses or attached grow houses with a common green through there. And then linked throughout the whole area would be sort of a multi-trail network, and that's the connectivity back into the community. So just a couple more slides to wrap up here. Implementation is a key piece. It's the hardest piece, but without a plan, you're not going to go anywhere. So you have the first step and you have the plan with your vision to move forward. You're gonna have to partner with the federal, state, regional organizations, property owners, which we've already started those dialogues through this process. You know, we want to build incrementally, so if a grant program comes up and they're selling apples, then we're gonna want to ask for money to grow apple trees, you know, so that's the thing we want to do. And these are long, these are a bit of marathons, they're not sprints, but this is the first start to moving forward, and you really have to keep sort of a focused effort and moving forward. We did put together an implementation plan, and this is just an example, and you may have seen it in the plan if you perused it, where we're phasing, we're saying, should it be something that should be happen immediately? Should it be something that's maybe 3+ years out? Is it a medium, high, or a priority project? And so every single recommendation in the plan is sort of ranked by these two factors. And so the last slide here is some of the elements that we're saying, well, here's where we should start immediately. We should look at that school, the reuse of that school. And to do that, you need to understand what are the market opportunities for that. The dog park is hugely popular. The 4th Street corridor improvements, especially as KDOT's looking at redoing the bridge, which is the next bullet. The solar array, looking into that. And then the community recreation feasibility study, again, this idea of perhaps moving the Y. Then within 3 years, doesn't mean you have to wait 3 years, but so you're starting then within 3 years, bringing together these businesses along Joplin and having them talk to each other and communicate. How can they help each other grow? And again, Mission Clay Polymer Units, MCPU, they have stated that they would like to relocate. They're really tight in there. They don't have a lot of room. So looking at that, they would like an area with rail access because they can bring in their raw material, their polymers. The arts and cultural feasibility study, again, what could those areas, should we keep the kilns? What could they be used for? Continuing environmental investigations, that's critical. We did some as part of the study, but certainly it's a big area, and there are some open files and records that you want to keep abreast of. And then relocating the skate park. So those are some of the, what we're seeing with the committee are things that could be started immediately or within a 3-year time frame. I believe that's it. So, sorry, that's fast.
There's a lot of work in a brief period of time here. So if you have any questions for them, as you go through and look at the details of the plan, I think you kind of see the benefit we've really had of an experienced planning agency that's done a lot of this type of work, working in a lot of different communities. They have community planners and economists and architects, all those people working together to kind of focus in on what could be done with our particular issue that we're facing here with the Mission Clay. So if you have any questions, this kind of expertise being brought to Pittsburgh is really a benefit to us, and hopefully we can take advantage of it. There's a lot of stuff here, I know, but if you didn't know if they can answer just about any question you have, I guess. So.
Questions? I guess I had one relative to, you guys walked through real quick, the usage and how you came to some conceptual plans and uses for the property. Can you walk us just briefly at like a 30,000-foot level? What is the timeline and process going forward in terms of getting from this plan? What's the next stage? Or what are the next dollars we need to tap into? Kind of walk through the stage of how we get this concept into fruition long term.
Well, I'll start and then Jay can chime in because it actually has already started. So having the plan is the first thing. So when you go for grant dollars, you will not be successful if you do not have an adopted plan. It's too competitive out there these
Sure.
days. We do a lot of grant writing and a lot of community work, master planning for looking at communities. Having a plan for this area, a plan for your entire community are critical as the next steps. Some of this, we sort of call it low-hanging fruit. Some of the stuff, actually, they've already, when you built your sidewalk to the where the KDOT bridge, that's great. So, now you're working with KDOT. So some things will happen sort of organically, immediately. The longer-term stuff, the city submitted a grant to the EPA for sort of the next step in their program, which is environmental investigation and cleanup. And that you haven't heard yet back. So
I've not heard back yet.
So
We applied in December for that.
Right. And what was the timing for us to hear back, and then what is the timing for us to be able to use those dollars
We have,
if we get them?
the time actually has passed when I expected to hear back from them. But,
Okay.
the EPA is going through its own issues at the moment. But we expect that to last probably about a year or so. And what that phase will give is really is a more in-depth real analysis where they're actually going to dig holes, all right? And as well as a remediation plan for how to clean it up. That's probably going to take around a year, all right? But before that happens, and this is probably and you jump in when, if I'm misspeaking the process, but because we have a plan, I can now shop that plan around. There are developers who specialize in brownfield redevelopment. The EPA has a brownfield conference every other year, and I went to the one 2 years ago, and I'm going to the one this year. The difference is this year I got a plan with me. And some of the people who attend those are people who specialize in brownfield redevelopment. So one of my goals while I'm there is to be meeting with brownfield redevelopers. And by the way, they all know that we've got the grant. They will be anxious to see the plan that we have. There's a lot of tax breaks for redevelopment on brownfields. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people are interested in it. So I'm hoping to have engagement with brownfield redevelopers relatively soon, certainly before the remediation plan is in place. Right?
And we do have a full chapter in the plan that actually lists potential funding sources for any number of these recommendations. So there's that in there too to help guide that, because no community can do this all. Right?
Sure.
Jeremy, you had a question?
When is that conference?
First week in December in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
With an H.
The other
The
Pittsburgh,
one with
right.
the one with
Gotcha.
names, right. But anyway, so I'm actually looking forward to that.
We've actually submitted to 3 presenters with Jay at this conference. So to present this plan
That's
to
awesome.
the audience of the people that go to this conference.
That's fantastic.
I hope to be able to get some representative from Mission Clay to come with me. It's important that they're involved. And I'd like them to see, to have experience of talking to these redevelopment people and seeing what they can do with their property. Right? So just to kind of show them the possibilities. Because this is stuff that's done all the time, every year around the country. And hopefully we can show them the plan we have. It's a community-based plan. There's a lot of community input into it. And once, if it's adopted by the commission, then we can say, okay, this is adopted by the community, and they can feel more comfortable moving forward with it. So they don't have to have a steep climb within the community that they're coming into.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I kind of had the same questions you did, Mike, about the hazardous material cleanup. Will that be cleaned up, the whole site, or will that just be cleaned up as we use the property?
If we get the next grant, all right, there'll be a complete remediation plan with that grant, and it'll give priorities and sequences of how to do it. There's different levels of cleanup. Based on the use that you plan, you can clean it up to one level. If you put it in residential, it has to be a much cleaner level, all right? So the remediation plan will follow the area-wide plan and maybe cause us to make some adjustments to this area-wide plan based on the actual results that they get.
Also, you mentioned something about this solar field. Did I hear you say Mission Clay family wants to put one in? And
No, I'm suggesting that could be sort of a piece. So, they obviously have all those buildings, all those kilns, a lot of clay pipes still. But that part of their property is relatively free of pipe. It was an area that they actually remediated, a smelting area already with the EPA. And it could be sort of one of those low-hanging fruits if they were interested or working with the city or however that project would advance. We're seeing that as something that could probably start immediately in its consideration of putting it in there, because it's not as complicated as, say, the residential piece over where the clay pipe is.
Actually, Chuck, I have gotten some feedback from the Mission Clay folks, and they said that there is interest in that. So they seemed interested.
Yeah.
Do you need us to approve this evening?
Well, actually, we're going to make some changes to it, so I'll be bringing it back to you in a couple weeks. I think we can probably do it in a couple weeks. If not, it'll be the meeting after that. But we want to have a final plan that will be appropriate for adoption. So.
Awesome. Well, this is very impressive and very exciting. I didn't make it all the way through the 100 pages, but I got pretty close, and it's super exciting to think about kind of the possibilities and the potential that this brings. I mean, for the community in and of itself, but then like the ways that it can kind of blossom out and
Right.
expand is really incredible to think about. So thank you guys for all of your help.
Thank you. We
putting
very,
this together.
very much appreciated working here. It's been a wonderful time.
And one of the things, to further the point you made, Elan has been working with some other consultants that have been in town, working with the Block 22 development, working with the redevelopment of the Kells College. It was very satisfying to see how all of these pieces are starting to fit together. And the need for a master plan just became very obvious, to put all these pieces together that are happening all over town, so we can coordinate them.
A master plan for the city, for the whole
Entire
city. I mean,
Right,
we,
right.
after seeing all this and all the pieces, we didn't put it in this plan, but maybe, really, with all of, you guys are doing so many great things that now if you start to stitch them together, we were talking about with John earlier, to really think about the full city and how you move forward. So then you have really a comprehensive plan that has all of this in it and all the other studies that are going on, so you can continue to get grant monies and move forward.
Sure. Good. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you
Appreciate
for all
it.
the work
Yeah.
that you've done on this.
All right, next item, consider the following amendment number 1 to a master services agreement, Limelight Marketing LLC. We're going to consider amendment number 1 to the master services agreement between the City of Pittsburgh and Limelight Marketing LLC, in which Limelight Marketing will commit up to 40 hours and resources per month, performing additional work to refine and enhance the city's website at the cost of $3,000 per month. Jay, go ahead.
Mayor, Commissioners, it's
I
me
just said
again.
it all.
Right. I think, one of the things when I first got to Pittsburgh was the obvious need, I heard from almost everybody, we need to redesign our website. And I waited quite a while to do that. There are a lot of other priorities, of course, but I think it reached a point in a time where we felt comfortable that we knew enough about what we needed for the website, and that it was the time to do it. There was enough going on in Pittsburgh, and I think we decided now was the time. So we put out an RFP to help us with the redesign of the website. We were fortunate enough during that time frame to have a local company that with experience in this area that did respond. They indeed provided the best response. We hadn't worked with them before, so what we wanted to do initially was to get kind of a base redesign of the website, some of the most crucial functions, what we referred to as a minimum viable product, the base website redesign, make sure we were comfortable with it, and frankly to make sure that the company that we're working with had the skills and ability to pull off what we wanted. We had a lot of demands for the new site, a lot of things we wanted to put into it, and in January you approved the initial phase of this, and I'm happy to say that Limelight has proven themselves. They've developed a website. We have 2 representatives from Limelight here today, and they're going to kind of walk you through the new website, kind of give you some of the highlights of it. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about what you're being asked to approve today. Okay. You guys want to give it a shot?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Brandy Johnson. It's good to be back. The last time I was here in January, we received approval to move forward with this contract and to build a website. And so we kicked that off in January, and we had a pretty aggressive timeline, I think of 12 weeks. We are happy to have worked with the city staff under Jay's leadership and the team that we worked with, and did complete the website, launching on time, on scope, and in budget. And as Jay mentioned, the plan all along was for this to be the MVP, the minimum viable product. We feel really good about the solution that has launched, and we are excited with your approval to continue that development and to bring the site to the full vision. A couple of statistics that we wanted to share with you since the site launched on April 28th is some of the statistics that we've seen as of just earlier this week. There were over 6,000 unique visits to the website so far. We've seen a shift from mobile use, from desktop to mobile use. Prior to launch, your site had 80% desktop visits and 20% mobile, and we've already shifted that to 50-50. So more people using the site from a mobile device, which was one of the goals, was to make it mobile friendly, and you'll get to experience that. Another metric that we've seen as a result has been a decrease in a bounce rate from a mobile device from 80%. So 8 of every 10 users who were coming to the site on a mobile device were leaving immediately, counting as a bounce, and that's dropped to 30%. So pretty significant improvement in that. So what we wanted to do tonight is take just a few minutes and give you a little brief tour of the website if you haven't had an opportunity to see it. And so I'll let Jenny take you through that.
Yep. So my name is Jenny Breeze, and I work for Limelight as well. I worked on this project with Jeff and Jay and the group of stakeholders from the various departments from the city. And to Jay's point, we knew this was an MVP launch. So with the resources we had and the pretty condensed timeline, we knew we had to focus on some really key areas. So to do that, we went through discovery with all of the stakeholders and heard from them, what information do you want to put out? What information do you hear that people are looking for from you? And then what are some of the high priorities that we see from analytics that people were already using the site for really frequently? And then the third thing I would say is there is a balance between kind of a brand presence and telling the story of Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh is this great, vibrant place to live, work, and play. So we want to make sure we got that across, but balance that with quickly and easily find what information I came to the city website for. So I'll just point out a few things. Has everyone had a chance to look through the site already? Cool. So yeah, I'll just point out a few things that we focus. So the number one thing that people did on the previous site and do on this site is click pay my bill. So we wanted to make sure that that was just really, really prominent, prominently located, and so we put it in the header. We made search really easy to use, so we made sure that that is also in the header and easy to find and use. We also have this a menu that was prioritized by the most important parts of the site that people use, and it's also kind of city departments. So we made some quick links here for those pages, and then a bigger menu that have some sublinks there for people to find what they're looking for. And then if we scroll down, you can see that we used some like brand messaging, a lot of photographs, and some quotes from Pittsburgh residents to kind of make it feel really welcoming and encourage people to continue looking through the site. And then to show an example of more of a, I don't know, more focused on the details. So on these pages where it's like, I want to learn about bids and proposals, how you guys do it, how I get the information and move forward. So here you're not going to see a lot of imagery and graphics. It's very just like straightforward. We made sure contact information is really easy to find. Any related links that once you're looking at bids and proposals, we thought through what are the other things that you would find relevant and interesting to encourage further navigation through the site. So we made related links really easy to find. So does everyone have their phones with them? Can we pull out from a mobile device so you can see the experience that way?
I actually pulled it up today, and as someone who, it was funny, Brandy, when you mentioned this, I'd tried using the mobile site before on a phone, and it's nigh impossible to do it. And
Yeah.
compared with this is awesome. Like, oh, look, it functions and is easy to get around in, and you can click on things.
Well, good to hear.
One of the statistics that we've gotten right away was the number of job applications that were made went up dramatically because everyone could easily use it on their phone. People who look for jobs. That's one of the side benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you used to not be able to do this. It was like a list of links that had no graphics and it was very user friendly.
Yeah.
So, or friendly, user unfriendly.
Yeah. So yeah, if you scroll down to, so if you click on the play button at the top, it'll take you down to that section of the website toward the bottom. And one of the first links there is the calendar of events. And I show you this because this is one of those kind of MVP style functionality that we had to get out. So we got out a calendar that works. It works pretty well on mobile and desktop, and it has the events, the information that you need, more information than you could get on the previous site. So there's room for photos and descriptions of events and some links out to social, like social media channels. But this is definitely somewhere that we feel like we could continue to enhance with an ongoing relationship here. So Anything else, Jay, you want me to
I don't
point
think
out?
so. By the way, it's no small feat to gracefully move from a desktop to a mobile version. And one of the most satisfying aspects of this was that. Another thing, a couple other things that I think that are important to keep in mind is that what you can't see here, what you don't see in the website, is what's behind the scenes that allows us to fill it with content. One of the biggest problems that I wanted to solve when we redesigned the website was to make sure that the content was current, that we kept it up to date. I know one of the most frustrating things I have in any website, and it certainly was, our website was a big violator of this, was a lot of out-of-date information, all right? So what we've built behind the scenes is a pretty robust content management system. And to the extent that we were able to distribute the responsibility for keeping those pages up to date to the people who are closest to them, the people who really are responsible for that information can now go into the content management system and update it themselves. In fact, they'll be responsible for updating it themselves. They've had training. They know how to use the system. It's relatively easy to use. So the system itself can be updated regularly and will be updated regularly. In fact, if the pages aren't updated over periods of time, people get automatic emails to be reminded, hey, this page hasn't been updated. Things like that are what we're looking to do to enhance the system, to make it easier and more current all the time. So that's kind of really, to me, as a kind of manager of this thing, keeping the content current and having an easy way to do that. That doesn't take a lot of staff time. If people like the Parks Department are constantly updating their information, now it's a lot easier for them to do that. And they can distribute it to other people. It doesn't have to be funneled through one person. And we have a kind of a robust security model behind it so that you can update this page, but you can't update this other page. So there's a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff that you can't see that really makes this site a particularly a good one for us. So as far as what we're asking for right now is for a contract to go on for another year, right? We're going to do it and make payments on a monthly basis so that we can continue development of the site. One of the things that Jenny mentioned a couple times is the analytics behind it. There's a strong analytics tool that's in the website as well, so we can track how the site is being used. We can track searches. We can track the sequence that people use, the clicks that they do to find out the path they're taking to get the information. And what we're going to do is analyze that on a regular basis and say, okay, we probably should restructure the site a little bit to reflect how people are using the system and what they're looking for, all right? And there's some complications to that. It's more sophisticated. So we want to make sure we have some support for that, at least for the next year. We also need, if you can look at, the amendment has number 3 kind of talks about the different pieces that we're looking at adding. But there's a whole bunch of pieces to that are really development pieces. This is not a support contract. This is a development contract that's going to help us refine it to become the site that we really want it to be, and make sure that we are able to continue to improve it. So, is there anything to add to that?
I don't think so. See if there are any questions. We're happy to answer questions.
I have a couple of questions. One, what did we pay you all to get this set up initially?
Do you want to answer that? I know it was,
Go ahead.
it was right at 50.
Right at 50,000.
Yeah,
50,000.
50,000.
Okay, and I noticed under Article 1, what we're agreeing to, that this is up to 40 hours a month for $3,000. That means that you don't have to, there's no base amount of time.
Yeah.
That's my issue with this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the way that we will work with this is we work with our clients in quarterly chunks. So we'll work with Jay particularly with his direction and set kind of overarching goals for what he would like to develop or accomplish within a quarterly time frame. And that'll kind of give us an overarching direction, and then we'll meet and set quarterly kind of chunks of work to essentially optimize those full 40 hours. So in partnership with Jay, and he should be and will be driving as well to maximize the value of that relationship and of that contract. So it could be that in one particular month, maybe we want to go heavier and the next month a little bit lighter, but in essence, we will manage to and ensure that we're providing the full 40 hours of value.
I myself have worked under consulting contracts numerous times, and really this protects them from the client demanding more she's making a commitment based on our commitment to pay her. She's making a commitment for staffing availability. And you put this in there essentially to protect the consultant for their time so that they aren't overburdened. Our relationship with Limelight is such that we're going to be working in what they call sprints. We have 3 months chunks where we're going to decide what needs to be done to the website and get that work done. I have every confidence that Limelight will frankly, if they keep it to 40 hours a month, I'd be surprised. But I understand where you're coming from though, Patrick.
We've already paid 50, and now we're looking at 36,000. Following this 12-month period, what are we looking at?
We will reevaluate at that time. I think at the end of this time frame, we will have what I would consider an essentially complete site. I hope not. I can't tell you that we won't engage them again, right? But my guess is it won't be at this level. All right. So with the way the content management system has been structured, and with the process we're going through in the next year, where we analyze the usage patterns and we refine the site over a year-long period, I have confidence, certainly by the past experience I've had with them, that we're going to have a very well-refined site. There will be changes to it from time to time, and fortunately for us, they're right down the street, and we will call on them from time to time.
You guys recall what we paid for I know some of you guys weren't here, but what we paid for the website the last time around?
I don't know, it was a couple years before I got here. Do
Jamie, you
remember, Jeff?
wouldn't by chance know?
It would be speculative.
I don't need you to, if you don't.
Originally, I'd say around 25 or 30 initially, and then after that, maybe about 5,000 or 6,000 annually every year, and that was basically a subscription. There was no support there, as far as helping us drive content, add content, or anything like that. It was literally just, we'll keep your site live for you on our system. So we were with them for about 6 years, so combined, probably in the 75 to 80,000 total.
The problem we ran into with this previous site was that any kind of change we needed to make, anytime they picked up the phone, the clock started ticking with them. So even what we would consider relatively minor changes cost us, first of all, they didn't let us do it, all right, which this site lets us do most of those changes. And then also cost us every time we talk to them. And we wanted to get out of that business, all right? And we will be out of that business.
Okay. Do you have anything further, Patrick?
I don't.
Okay. Guys? All right, so do we have a motion to approve or disapprove Amendment 1?
I'll move to approve.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve Amendment 1 to the Master Services Agreement. All votes in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Apex Stages Expansion Project. Consider the recommendation of the Economic Development Advisory Committee to sell a 20-acre city-owned parcel in the Airport Industrial Park at a price of $2,500 per acre, provide a property tax exemption for 5 years, and pay half of the projected cost of utility work, up to $20,000, that will be needed to accommodate a new facility to be constructed by Rallison LP, the parent company of Apex Stages and Progressive Products. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission. Very proud to bring this project to you for your consideration. We've been working with Todd Allison, who's the owner of Rallison LP, the owning company of Progressive Products and Apex Stages. Been working with Todd for at least 12 months, actually closer to 16 months on this potential project. You have a rendering of what the building would look like, but I also wanted to show you and those that might be watching at home the area that we are talking about as we look for a place to build a new facility to facilitate growth at Apex Stages. So the aerial that we have up here is of the Airport Industrial Park. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask Todd to go into a little bit of detail on the project itself, but just wanted to show you where the facility currently is. This is Progressive Products. Right there where the cursor is, just south of Progressive, is the current facility for Apex Stages. As you can see, it is landlocked where it is. The road is just south of there. The land to the west is unusable. So as Todd looks for places to grow, identified some city-owned property right across the way over here north of Martinez Produce, and we've been in discussions with him about 20 acres of city-owned land that would be appropriate and ideal for his expansion. So the EDAC considered this project, but before I go into their recommendation to you, wanted to just ask Todd Allison to tell you a little bit about his company and a few of the specifics on the project itself. Todd.
So Progressive Products is a manufacturing company that builds industrial equipment, specifically pneumatic conveying equipment. But we also have a division, Apex Stages, which builds mobile hydraulic concert stages for the entertainment industry. And we just expanded the building of Progressive Products in 2015. We added about 15,000 square foot onto it. And at this point, we're pretty much landlocked. My problem is that Apex Stages are sold out in 6-month increments. So I'm booked up through October and I can't build anymore. And it's not a matter of rearranging the workspace. I just need more of it. Some of our products are 40 foot long, so I just have to have more area. So clearly I needed a new building, and we are definitely landlocked. So working with the city, we've identified this spot out over here that you guys have a little rendering of, where we can build a new facility, and it's sort of a two-in-one development initially, because what I plan on doing is building a building here, and then that will free Apex up to move entirely, thereby giving me expansion room for PPI so I can buy some equipment that I want to put over there. And as soon as I get up and running within, I would say, about 3 years, I'm literally going to double the building at Apex. So we're only talking about the first wave of expansion here tonight, but ultimately the plan is to double the size of the building. I just didn't want to do it all at once. The initial building will be 30% larger than the building I'm using right now for Apex. So it'll give me the expansion I need, plus some area around the building to store inventory. It's because I can park trailers outside and I'm a little bit limited in space where I'm at right now. So that will give me also some flexibility and stuff moving around. But I do expect within 3 years to double the size of the building. So I would imagine the initial investment is going to be between $800,000 and $900,000 between the real estate investment and the equipment investment, not counting any equipment I decide to buy for the moving stuff over into PPI, into the old building. And as I've discussed with Blake, I'm always very conservative on adding job numbers, but I imagine the job number will at least be 5, but probably closer to 10 people initially, assuming I can find the skilled workers to do the work. So.
How many employees do you have right now?
It varies, but I would say it's around 45, 46.
And you might add 5?
I know I will add 5. I probably will add closer to 10, but for an economic development number, since you guys hold us to those, I'm going to use 5 as a number. And it's finding the right people for the job sometimes takes time, and so it'll be a while before I can find 10 people that are reliable, quite frankly.
What do those jobs typically pay?
$15 to $20 an hour.
So do you have to train them, or do they have any skills when you hire them?
Sort of depends. The Apex side uses a little less skilled labor. They use a little more assembly kind of labor. And so that's on-the-job training. Obviously, I'm looking for mechanically skilled people, but I do occasionally have to find people with specific talents like welding. But finding aluminum welders is pretty much a non-starter. I usually have to find someone that can weld and train specifically for aluminum. I have been lucky to find an aluminum welder recently, but that's a pretty rare situation.
Do you get any from the Tech center?
I do, I have 3 on staff.
Do what?
I do, I have 3 on staff right now.
Anything else?
So to kind of recap, as Todd mentioned, this is a 31,000 square foot facility, roughly $800,000 to $900,000 investment from the company. 5 to 10 new jobs with a wage scale of $15 to $20 an hour. So given the community impact, the EDAC recommendation to you tonight in terms of an incentive package is, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, first of all, with this being city-owned property, as part of our incentive package, the land is appraised at almost $5,000 an acre, but as part of the incentive package, the EDAC is proposing that we would sell it to Mr. Allison for $2,500 an acre, so a 50% savings on the sale of the land. The property tax exemption that you mentioned will actually come at a later time. There's a formal process for the property tax exemption. Todd will submit an application, the cost-benefit analysis, and the EDAC and the City Commission will consider that separately. But if all the numbers pan out, then that would be a part of the incentive package as well. But then also, because there will need to be some utility work run to the site, and Cameron and Matt have been very helpful in helping us get cost estimates on this. Cost estimates on that is $40,000. So the recommendation from the EDAC is that the city would cover half of that, up to a liability of $20,000, and that would help make the project possible. So those are the recommendations that we would bring to you tonight. I would say the 2 items minus the property tax exemption, because that will come later. But that's what we bring to you tonight for your consideration to help with this project.
If there's no questions, I'll move to okay this.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Blake.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Ordinance number S-1044, consider adopting ordinance number S-1044, calling for a special election to be held on July 11th, 2017, for the purpose of voting on a proposition to authorize the City of Pittsburg, Kansas to levy a special purpose citywide retailer sales tax in the amount of 0.25% to be levied for a term of 5 years to take effect on October 1, 2017, or the next available date, with the revenue therefrom to pay for the maintenance and repair of city streets, and not to exceed $50,000 annually to pay for sidewalk repair matching funds for property owners.
Mayor, City Commissioners, we have an opportunity in front of us to actually pay off a $2 million debt burden a year early, which is a good thing. It was basically the price for paying off the bonds that built this facility in Fire Station number 1. Jamie's done a great job with the finance. We will pay it off in probably September. So at that time, our current sales tax rate of 1.75 locally, which it's actually 9.25 overall, but the local share of that tax is 1.75, will be reduced. A half cent will go away, so we'll drop to 1.25. The staff's recommendation, after looking at all the needs that we have, there's nothing more pressing than our streets. We have a couple of things that are going against us right now with regards to our ability to preserve our streets. The first and foremost is that the state no longer has the money in KDOT to do a lot of the matching programs that we participated in. So, for instance, in a given year, we would spend $1 million, and we would, like many other communities around the state, would take advantage of the matching programs and pick up another $250,000 or $300,000 from the state, and there we'd get about $1.3 million value for $1 million. Things being what they are, that's no longer the case, and it doesn't look like it's going to turn around anytime soon. So our recommendation to you today is that we would take a half of that expiring half cent or a quarter cent and put that towards street preservation. We are currently probably doing, depending on who you talk to, 1/10 of what we need to do, and that's probably conservative every year. This would allow us to double our efforts. It would by no means solve all of our road problems. but it's a very good faith effort. I think it's something that would be responsible based on the state of the state right now, and we don't want to fall further behind. We have many brick roads that have a 2-inch covering of asphalt. That doesn't last very long as a normal asphalt street would last. So our recommendation to you for consideration tonight is that on July 11th, we would have an election. Put it to the people, ask for them to approve a 1/4 cent street preservation tax. And we have a small opportunity. We don't usually get opportunities. We have an opportunity to address something that we don't usually address, which is the connectivity in the town and the sidewalks. We always hear about sidewalks. We don't have a sidewalk program. If we had a sidewalk program, I think it would be extremely expensive if the city had to try to go around and fix sidewalks. So what we were offering up as part of this $1 million, which is an estimate that would be generated by the 1/4 cent, if we could take up to no more than $50,000 a year and put it in a reserve fund, if you will. So if anybody was interested in doing the work on their sidewalk in front of their house, which by state statute is their responsibility, not the city's, we would share with them 50% in that cost, and then we would take their 50%. And if they wanted us to, we could assess it over 7 years through a special assessment. So it's a very friendly way to perhaps drive some of those rehabilitation of the sidewalks in the area. It's a very small amount of the $1 million, 5% if you will, but that's our recommendation tonight. We would hope that we could get 51% of the voters to go for it. It has a lot of reasons why we need to do it, and I think more importantly, we need to appreciate the fact that we will be retiring that 1/2 cent early, a year early, and it allows us to have the flexibility to repurpose some of it, if you will, to take care of a very important need. So with that, I appreciate the staff and everybody and your time and letting us bring that to you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Darren, on the 50,000 per year for sidewalks, if we don't use the 50,000, will that go back, whatever's left, to street repair?
Yeah, we tried to write it as clearly as we could. That will happen. That's the intent, and hopefully it says that, but it's without writing 3 paragraphs. We kind of just tried to wordsmith it, but that is the intent, Chuck. We will not roll that over. That will be all, if we only get 10,000 or 500, the rest of it'll all be used for street preservation with the exception of that amount.
Thanks.
Yep.
I did want to point out and just reemphasize something that you said for those who may be watching and for those who are here in the room. I mean, we had a lot of discussion about what to do with this, and the goal is to also give citizens some relief on some sales tax.
Absolutely.
With this. So we want to make sure it's clear that this is not an increase from where we are today.
Correct.
This would be basically a 25 cent or 1/4 cent reduction in sales tax.
If this tax was passed July 11th, our sales tax rate would go from 1.75 to 1.5.
Right.
So, yeah, it would definitely net in a reduction, which is good for all of us.
Yes.
My experience with the sales tax that we already have that we're using for these roads is that it's being very well appreciated by the voters. They seem to understand the need for it and appreciate what's going on. So hopefully they will appreciate this extra 1/4% that we're going to put into this pot.
And honestly, the only complaint I've heard about it is that it's not happening fast enough, or they wish that it was the street in front of their house instead of the other ones. And like, well, the way to do that is to pass taxes like this to make sure that it happens, because the city only has a limited amount of what they can do in any given year.
I think it's a good time to note for people that are listening too, when the city decides what streets are going to be done each year, I wouldn't say it's a complicated, but it's a very detailed analysis of the rating of those streets, how much traffic they carry. We try to pay attention to the 4 quadrants of town, so we don't just, if the 15 worst streets are in the southeast quadrant, we don't just spend it all over there. We realize people live all over town. This is supposed to be a tax to support everybody. So Pitt State's helped us with that, but we give a lot of thought to doing the right streets, not just the next street on the list, because sometimes the next street on the list isn't the one that needs done. And I appreciate the fact that the voters have already given us the confidence a couple of times on these street sales taxes, but I do think with the state being in the position they're in, we're going to continue to fall more and more behind, and you're never going to get your street on the list if we don't do something. So I appreciate you all giving consideration of that
And to
item.
your point, Darren, I mean, we have regular updates here at the commission meeting that can also be made available to the public if they had a question about how the current street sales tax has been used and where it's gone to and how much money's been spent and what miles. Those could be made available, and we would do the same thing if this was added.
Absolutely. We'll continue to do that, whatever happens.
I think just to reemphasize that, you know, it's a fact that we appreciate the quarter cent that we have now, but at that, we'll never get all the roads done in town. This would just be, by adding this other quarter cent in there, would just be a great boost to get all of the roads done and help keep them done up that way too.
And once again, this tax is not just on the property owners of Pittsburgh, it's on everyone that comes to town and uses our streets and make purchases, so
Great point.
that should be noted also, so.
Yep.
Yes. All right, we have a motion to approve.
If there's no further questions, I move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve, and it's been seconded. All votes in favor?
Aye.
Motion, all votes against? I'm jumping to conclusions. All right, motion carries. All right, non-agenda reports and requests.
I just want to say thank you for Saturday's 5-hour effort. It was our annual working day. I think you all are starting to understand and appreciate how important that day is to what you do in a given year. There's only so much we can knock out in these meetings, but I know it's a big deal. Executive staff and everybody put in a lot of time planning and then actually having the day on a Saturday. So thank you very much, and thanks to the executive team, and we'll do it again next year.
No, we thank you guys for all the effort and time that you guys put in, because it just makes our work that much easier.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All votes in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. We are adjourned.